Assalamu alaikum. My name is Roman Iqbal. I'm the attorney at CARE. The plan today is to do a Know Your Rights, and what we'll be doing is that people who are here, we will have to work with me because I don't have it's not a lecture, so we will have to interact. And I do need to hear from you because there are really no answers to the things I'm going to speak about. There really are no answers. So we have to sort of engage and speak to each other and figure out these issues which are pretty complex. These issues are litigated all the time, and there's no good answers on these issues. So what I'll do is that I will give a range of scenarios of, the police comes, what can you do? I'll read them out to you, you can see them here, and then let's discuss what you would like to do, and then I will give you my suggestions. And there's no, I can't give you a right answer, but I could give you suggestions on what you could be doing, and I'll give you some concrete information on what you should be doing, which is legal or illegal. So, CARE again, very briefly, the Council on American Islamic Relations, Ohio. I work with the Ohio chapter in 32 chapters across the country. CARE does civil rights work, which is if a Muslim faces discrimination, be it in a public space, in a hotel, in a grocery store, at work, with the police, with the FBI, with anything. If it has to do with discrimination against Muslims, CARE provides representation for that. I'm obviously an attorney here in Columbus. I also take cases from Cleveland. We have another attorney in Cincinnati. Actually in Columbus we have 2 attorneys, and we take cases both in Columbus and Cleveland. And our office is on 1505 Bethel Road. That is the numbers for our office. I also have my business card, which I'm going to keep here, and you guys can take them if you like. This is my number and my email. If I'm not at CARE, the email won't be there anymore, but the number will still be the same. That's my cell number. I'm leaving some cards here as well. You guys can take them if you like. And again, if you have any questions, stop me. There's nothing specific that I do want to cover, so we just, we keep going, and then when we get tired or time gets over, we stop. Now, how much time do I have? Okay, all right. So let's just jump right into it. Now, I'm going to go over some of the slides, because I don't think you guys would care. It's talking about the Constitution. I'm sure you heard of it. It talks about free speech, and I'm sure everybody knows here free speech. But are there any lawyers here? Law students? All right, apart from me. Okay. First Amendment. That doesn't matter. All right, we're here. Okay. So what rights do you have if you get contacted by law enforcement? By law enforcement, I mean the police, State Highway Patrol, FBI, ICE, Joint Terrorism Task Force, hopefully not. Anybody. Anybody with a badge, anybody with authority. What do you do when you interact with them? You will be interacting with them, trust me, just a matter of time. All right, so how do we bring this down a little bit? All right, doesn't matter. Okay, scenario 1. You're walking down the street and the police flags you down, okay? You're going anywhere, it's in public. You're walking down and the police flags you down, they approach you. What do? First option, you run away, okay? Second option, you refuse to identify yourself. Third option, you refuse to produce any identification. They ask you, hey, can I see your ID? No. You pretend to be a neighbor. You pretend to be somebody else. You just say, hey, I'm not Yasser. I'm Yasser's cousin. All right? You start cursing the cop. That's an option. Let's keep going. All right. So, first one, run away when the cop approaches you. Any ideas on that? I mean, if you can run fast enough. Any ideas? Except for Yasser.
It's not allowed.
Not allowed. What's not allowed?
To run away.
Okay, good answer. You cannot outrun the cop, not because the cop is a fast runner, because that would be illegal. And that will give them cause to shoot you. So do not run away if the cop is approaching you. Not a good idea. Second one, the cop says, identify yourself. Do you have to? You just say, no, not gonna do it. What do you guys think?
Like ask for their badge.
What's that?
They have to ask for their badge.
Well, no, he's asking you to identify you. He's saying, hey, identify you. You know, identify yourself. Can I see who you are? What's your name, brother? Amin? All right. So let's say I'm a cop, or whoever, somebody in authority, and you're walking down the Union Road, right here, you're coming out, and I say, hey, can I see some ID? Identify yourself. What would you say?
Do you have a permit or something?
What's that?
Do you have a permit or something?
I don't, I'm a cop, I'm concerned, there's robberies here. Can you identify yourself? What would you do?
Can I ask why?
I'm telling you I'm a cop.
So,
there's a robbery down the street.
okay.
What would you do? But that's fine, I mean, yeah,
I can show them my license, but I don't know.
Okay, all right. So, and then those are good answers, by the way. The reason I was engaging, I think I like that, by the way. You know why? That's a fair question. Why? Why do you want to see? Well, what's going on? In Ohio, and this is very important, in Ohio, you can refuse to identify yourself, and you can also refuse to produce identification. In a lot of states, you cannot do that. So if I'm a viewer in some other state, let's call it, I don't know how this law in other state, but let's say it's in Michigan. In a lot of states, they have that law. So I'm a viewer in what you're playing with him, right? Why? In Michigan, if you are in one of those states, they can get you for that because they will compel you. Now in Ohio, they cannot compel you to produce identification. They cannot compel you to even say who you are. You can simply refuse to answer.
What if they randomly flag you as like a suspect for like?
What's that?
What if they randomly flag you like specifically as a suspect for a particular crime or action?
Right, they could be. I mean, you don't know. But see, the thing again is that when they're approaching you, you don't know, right? They're just saying, what's your name?
Yeah. Oh, Hamza.
Hamza?
Yeah.
So they're saying, sir, identify yourself. Can I see your ID?
Well, no, I'm saying like specifically they're like, oh, well, we're looking for like a black male in like a white robe and like a black coat.
They can say whatever they want, but the law in
They can
Ohio is
still
that
like that, okay.
you don't have to identify yourself. I mean, you are who you are, and they can see that. But the law is you don't. But now I'm not saying that this is a course of, every time a cop stops you, you just, go ahead, sorry.
Does that also apply when they're pulling you over because you're speeding or something?
You'll
They
get
ask
to
for
the
your
car.
license?
Being in the
Okay.
car is very
Different.
different than being out on the street. So see, the scenario is you're walking down the street. So this is not when you are in the car, which is a different scenario. And so there is no confusion here. It's very important to understand. I'm not saying anytime a cop stops you, you simply tell them, I'm not going to tell you who I am, no ID, get lost. But you can say that. And if you feel that, you feel comfortable, you can do that in Ohio. Next one, pretending to be a neighbor, which basically is saying you're pretending to be somebody else. How about that? Any problems with that, anybody?
No.
Yeah, so you can't do that.
Let's hear
No,
it.
no.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Can do what?
You can't pretend to be someone else.
Okay, why not?
Isn't that like lying to a cop?
Yeah, exactly.
falsifying-
Can you say that loudly?
Falsifying information.
Yes. You can refuse to answer who you are in Ohio, but you cannot pretend, you cannot pretend to be Yasser or Hamza. And because if you do that, that would be lying to a cop, and that can get you in very serious trouble. So be careful. We only talking about you don't have to say who you are, but once you tell them who you are, you have to be honest.
And students usually do that. Students, they say, they go to the different schools. They will always say, I'm not,
If they pretend to be somebody they're not to an officer,
and they were in trouble.
they can be in very serious trouble, and the name Muhammad or something could be even more trouble. So
Right.
I would not do that. What about just getting nasty with the cop? Just telling him to get lost, get in his face. How about that? Any problems with that?
Technically, it shouldn't be illegal, right?
Yes, so they'll probably arrest you. Now, again, the law is not clear, but they can probably get you for disorderly conduct. So I would avoid getting into a confrontation with a cop or an officer or FBI or whatever. I think that you can refuse to identify, and that's well within your right, but you cannot get in his face, cursing him, or get aggressive, because they'll probably get you for disorderly conduct. Now it's questionable whether they can do that or not, but you don't want to go down that route. Okay, So,
Actually, I have a question about that.
yeah, sure.
What if a cop like badmouths you, like starts cussing at you? Are you allowed to?
No, you should not cuss back a cop. A, he has a gun, you don't.
Okay. But like, legally speaking, shouldn't you? Be
Well,
allowed-
right, well, I'm answering both, I mean, legally and, I mean, as a,
'Cause I've actually, it's happened to me.
oh, really?
Yeah.
I would not curse back at a cop.
An a-hole and like all this.
Right, I mean, at that point, just gotta, maybe you could whip out a camera and start recording him, but I will not mix it up with a
Yeah.
cop. That's a bad idea.
Can
All right.
you record a cop for no reason if he's like in a public place?
All right, in Ohio, we are a 1% consent state, which, here's what that means. Let's say I call you on the phone. I can record you without telling you I'm recording you. Now, we only speak of Ohio. Some states are 2% consent. It basically means if I'm recording you, I have to get your permission, not in Ohio. Now, your question is, can I record a cop in a public place? You could, but you will probably get a bloody nose, because cops do not like being recorded. There are lots of cases the ACLU has taken where the cop, while doing his public duty, the citizen was simply recording him, and they said that's unconstitutional, you cannot do that, the cop is saying you're violating my rights, they arrested them. So if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine in Ohio, but be careful that, again, if you are in a rush, if you're in an area where there are 5 cops and you're the only person, beware that the cops just have a visceral, awful reaction to being recorded. They should not, but typically they're not educated on these issues, and they get in your face, and it gets nasty. And it happens all over the country. But to answer your question specifically, yes, you can record them while they're engaged in carrying out a public duty, which is being a cop. So let's talk about things you might want to say to a cop, or may not. So let's take the first scenario. So you're walking down now or whatever, and the officer says to you, this is very common, do you know why I stopped you? What should be the answer? I mean, the answer here is, I think you stopped me because of whatever. What do you guys think of that answer?
It's a bad idea.
Hmm?
It's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
You
Yes.
you don't wanna, first of all, give them things that they could possibly be doing wrong. Like, for example, when I get pulled over, I don't, this is again a car, but I don't say that I'm speeding to something that I am doing, because sometimes they can pull you over for another reason.
Well, we're not talking about car, we're just talking we're not in the car
Yeah,
yet.
but
So
like, you
even
don't
when
give
you're
them a
out,
reason
Right.
to find something else.
right, again, and I think it's a bad idea. If the cop is asking you, sure. All right, so if the cop is asking you, do you know, even though you instinctively might want to say, yeah, I know why you stopped me because I was, whatever, don't say that. The other one, the cop may say, if you have something in your hand, hey, can I search this? Let's say you're carrying a bag, you're carrying a school bag, can I search it? What would you say? Yeah, sure, I got nothing to hide? No?
You're right,
Don't they have to
but
present probable cause?
What's that?
Let me see your warrant.
All right, let me see your warrant, what else?
They have to present probable cause or some reason for them
All right,
to go through.
here's what I would recommend. If the cop is saying to you, can I search? The answer invariably is no. No, you cannot. It doesn't matter if they have a warrant, if they have a probable cause, who cares what they have. It will not benefit you by telling a cop, go ahead, please search my bag. It's just simply no benefit.
what if the cop like physically retaliates and like forcefully tries to like search your bag or whatever?
Right, but the question, in this scenario, he's simply asking you, can I search? He's not wrestling with you.
Okay.
But let's take your scenario. What if he starts wrestling? I would just let him do what he's doing.
Okay.
Again, he's got a gun. And even if you have a gun, you don't want to have a,
A shootout.
yeah, with a cop. So if, at that point, see, the point again is that as you as a citizen can withhold your consent. When they ask you, with a warrant, without a warrant, with or without probable cause, you can simply say, no, I don't. But then you step back and let them do what they're doing because you don't want to mix it up with the cop.
Like sue them later or something?
Well, that's for later, right? But at that point,
You just
and that's good, right? I mean, you tell him no and he's doing it anyway, you may have, you may have a cause of action as well.
Isn't it legal for cops to search you
have a.
It can be in circumstances, but see, here's the thing to understand. You don't have to know the law whether, when the cop is saying, hey, can I, right? You don't have to get into his mind, like, is it legal, is it not legal, does he have probable cause? Who cares what he has? You simply say no, right? Because you can withhold consent, that is your right. And giving him consent, I don't know what good can come out of giving him consent to do something. I mean, of course, you're free to do it. If you feel comfortable with the cop, you trust the cop, you go ahead and you can do that. And I'm not saying that in any, but I'm just telling you what your rights are. I don't think that it'll, as an issue of rights, you can withhold consent and not suffer any consequences for withholding consent. The other one, where are you going? You answer, I was headed to the union to find out about my rights, right? Let's say you came in before they asked you, where are you headed? What would be the answer? By now you should know, guys, where are you headed?
To school?
No, dude, not to school. You have it, if they ask you where you headed, well, okay, to school, that's a good point. Now, once you've said to school, there's nothing wrong in saying you headed to school, right? You are headed to school.
Yeah.
But here's what you have to realize. Once you tell the cop you are headed to school, then you have given him an answer. That answer can be used against you. Anything you say to the cop, that can later be used against you. They don't have to give you Miranda rights, by the way. So if you be very careful what you say to the cop, I'm not saying that you just be obstructive every time a cop stops you and be a jerk. But all I'm saying is just remember, if the cop is saying, where are you going? And you said to school, nothing wrong in saying you were headed to school. But remember, you can, then that will become part of the record and they will use that against you if there is a need. So just be careful what you say to the cop. Anything you say to the cop, doesn't matter what it is, can be used against you without them giving you any Miranda warning which you hear in the movies. Okay, things you can do when the police stops you. First one, and you could go look at, there are wonderful YouTube videos where they show you how to do that. So let's say now you're in a scenario where the cop does stop you, right? And now you're standing in front of him, whatever reason, and you're talking, maybe you're silent. At that point, it is very important you ask him, am I being detained? Because if you're not being detained, then you can just walk off. So you have the right to ask him, am I being detained? And the reason it's critical to ask that question is that once you tell them that you are being retained, once they tell you that you are being detained, then you have more rights. So it's very important that you ask them, if they stop you, hey, am I being detained? What do you need from me? Or you simply walk, and they tell you no, then you have a right to simply walk off. You don't have to continue sitting there and talking to them or standing there and answering the questions. So you, hey, am I being detained? No, you just walk off. Now on YouTube, I've seen videos where cop stops you, asks a question, and the only answer is, am I being detained? Am I free to go? And they just keep shouting it. Again, legally in Ohio, you can do that, but this crowd, I would be careful doing that with a cop, especially with the men, you actually may get shot. So I would be careful. I mean, again, it depends. If you're at night, it's 11:30, and you know, I would be careful, you know, again. What's that?
No, they can, she said, can they do that?
Can they do what? Well, what I'm saying is that, if you make them suspicious and looking at the, I mean, you have to be, I mean, see, we're talking about what your rights are. I'm not saying this is, you should, every scenario, every time a cop stops you, you start shouting, am I being detained? And you can go to YouTube and it happens. People just keep shouting, am I being detained? Yes or no? Can I go? And they do that, and you could do that. But all I'm saying is be careful. Even though it's legal to do that, you be careful. Okay, now what if the answer is say yes? And by the way, it's important that you have to ask. And you don't have to shout it out and be crazy about it and have a YouTube moment, but you can simply ask politely, am I being detained? Can I walk? If he tells you, because he cannot just keep you without telling you you're detained, right? He just cannot keep you there. At some point he'll have to say, yes, you are being detained.
What if he says, no, you're not being detained, but
Then
I
you
need
walk
you to
off.
hold tight? Or
Okay, hold tight, then you said, so well, that's being detained, right? But let him say, that's good, so let him say that. And then you ask him after another 2 minutes, am I being detained? And then you keep asking him.
And he just repeats the answer.
All right, then I would consider that to be that you are being detained, because he's not letting you go. At that point, if it becomes a long period of time where he keeps saying the same thing, just hang on, can go, or he just tells you you're being detained. At that point, it's very important that you have to tell them that you are exercising your right to remain silent. So they stop this questioning. They stop talking to you. And there's a lot of case law, there's a lot of controversy on what exactly, when can you say it, but as a rule of thumb, if they're standing, once you sort of get the idea that you are being detained, that you're being not allowed to leave, tell the cop you are exercising your right to remain silent and ask for a lawyer.
Does he have to present a reason for detaining you?
They actually don't. They don't have to, but you should ask. You should ask, what's going on? I personally would not want, honestly, I think that there's a downside in that, because then you get into a conversation. When you ask the question, why am I being detained, what's going on? Well, then at that point, then you start getting into a conversation. And you might end up saying things that you might not want to say, right? So I would be careful asking too many questions. But just two things. I have a right, get me a lawyer, and I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I don't want to speak to you. Now, if you get arrested, where they put handcuffs on you or they take you to the station, under no circumstances at that point, so once you're arrested, then you have to give your name and address. Once you get arrested, that's when they put handcuffs on you, they take you down to the station. You cannot continue to say, I'm not going to identify myself. Now they handcuff you, you headed to the station. At that point, you can give your name and address, but it's very critical that you do not under any circumstances at that point have any conversation with them, because they will use that against you. It doesn't matter if they give you the Miranda warning or not, simply stop speaking. And this goes to what Hamza asked, do you have to follow the instructions? As in that, what if they just are compelling you? If they're compelling you, the only thing I would do is that they cannot compel you to speak to them. So don't speak to them. However, if they're searching your bag and they're doing other things, you have to follow instructions. If they're saying, stand there, you have to stand there. If they're saying, stand here now, you have to stand here. Whatever they're saying, you have to do it, because the problem is that at that point, if you don't do it, they could probably get you for disorderly conduct, for obstructing them, and there's a whole bunch of silly statutes where they can get you for. So follow the instructions. You have to cooperate with them, but you have to keep your mouth shut. So the emphasis is on keeping your mouth shut, not on ignoring them. Follow the instructions. Get out here, sit down, get up, walk there, this way, do it. All right, scenario 2. So now you get up, now you're in the car, and then you see lights. You see a cop car. Option 1, you call it 911. Option 2, they say, license please. You say, talk to the hand. Option 3, they ask you, can I see your registration, sir? You say yes. Can I see your insurance? Sure. Option 5, the cop will ask the question, do you know why I stopped you? And you tell them, if you know the reason, you tell them, here's why I think you stopped me in the car. Option 6, you try to get away, you run away, try to lose the cop. So let's start with option 6. Anybody think that's a good idea? You just try to race the cop?
I mean, you gotta be really good.
You gotta be really good, right? You gotta have a good car.
Yeah.
All right, anybody think here it's a good idea? If you can lose the cop, just keep racing? When you see the lights? No? All right, guys, that's a bad idea. Please do not race the cops. Let's go back to number 1. Call up 911. No, because that's 911.
They are.
So don't call up 911. That'll be a waste of time. Now, option 2. The cop says, license please, identify yourself. Anybody? Come on, guys. License please, identify yourself. Who are you? You're sitting in the car.
Well, you have to. Well, you have to, because you're in the car.
You have to, because you're in front, like a mobile transportation.
Yes, you have to. In Ohio, you have to. You cannot say talk to the hand. You cannot say get lost. I'm silent. You have to answer.
What if you say talk to the hand and hand them the license?
If the license is in the hand. So you have a license in the hand and you say talk to the hand, right?
High five.
So remember, if you're not in the car, you don't have to identify yourself. If you're in the car in Ohio, you have to identify yourself. You have to produce a license. What about registration?
Same thing.
Yes. What about insurance?
Yes.
Yes. These are three things. License, registration, insurance. After these three things, it is just like you have the street. So everything else applies. Now, cop will, they typically ask you, do you know why I stopped you? Answer always, I don't know. Or say nothing. You never want to tell the cop why you think he stopped you, because then they will use that against you. And it happens all the time. They always ask you, you know why I stopped you? Well, because I was speeding. No, don't just say nothing. If you say nothing, nothing bad will happen. Let's see.
Ask for the van.
Number 7, if the cop, comes to you and says, can I search your car? You say yes and help him search your car. Good idea, bad idea?
Stay in the car.
Aren't you able to withhold that because it's like private property? You don't
What's
have to
that?
allow- It's private property, so you don't have to let them search it without like permit.
Right.
or warrant. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if the cop is saying, can I search your car? The answer always is no. The answer to anything, if the cop is asking anything, the answer is always should be no. Because he's going to do it anyway. If he wants to search your car, he's going to get and search your car. There is no benefit in giving consent. Simply say no, I'm sorry. Simply say no,